It is time for another monthly astrology forecast. And yes, it is July. Happy July 1st. June was quite a whirlwind for me, so I'd love to hear how all of that shook out for you. But I'm definitely already feeling the shifts in energy as the month has turned, and of course, the end of June, we had a lot of transitions. But yeah, we're starting off this month with a bang. So without further ado, I will jump in. If you're new here, my name is Mariana, and I do a bit of an eclectic, intuitive read on astrology that blends a bit of ancient Hellenistic wisdom with some more modern interpretation. And what's probably most unique about me is that I focus on astrology for the collective. I'm interested in the cosmic climate in the same way that ancient rulers and priestly class were, not necessarily the personality or individual application of astrology as it has become in modern times. So this might be a little bit different than what you're expecting if you're used to traditional astrology, but yeah, let me know. What do you think about this kind of astrology? Is it helpful for you as we are navigating this new Earth leadership transition that we're going through right now? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So please drop a comment, like if you are called to my style, my voice, my vibe. I'd love to have you follow as well. So yeah, regardless, thanks for being here now. I am calling the theme of July 2026 truth and authentic expression. Because there comes a point in every season of growth when understanding is no longer the primary task. We spend time learning, questioning, healing, and slowly reshaping our inner world, often without any immediate change that is visible from the outside. Eventually, however, life asks something different of us. It asks us to begin participating from that person we have become, right? So allowing our values, insights, and lived experience to actually shape the way that we are creating, relating, contributing, and leading. So June, yes, it marked an important turning point in that process. As Cancer season has been encouraging more emotional integration and stronger foundations, the focus has really shifted away from simply gathering new information and toward making sense of what has already changed, right? So by the time Mercury stationed retrograde at the end, well, it's actually at the beginning of this week, but at the end of last month, and Jupiter too also shifted signs, moved into Leo at that time, the emphasis had already begun moving from internal reflection towards the possibility of authentic expression. Now, July is going to continue along that progression, not by abandoning the inner work, mind you, but by asking us all what naturally emerges when our actions begin reflecting our deeper truth. Now, the astrology of July 2026 really reflects this transition with remarkable consistency. Jupiter spends its first full month in Leo immediately encountering questions of confidence and self-worth before gradually opening up new opportunities for creative participation. Cancer season is going to continue strengthening the emotional clarity. And again, when that Cancer new moon and then also Mercury is retrograding through Cancer, eventually it will station direct. But all of this is ensuring that the outward momentum remains rooted in genuine self-understanding. Finally, as the sun enters Leo later on in the month, and eventually we see a culmination with the Aquarius Full Moon, the focus is going to expand beyond our personal growth and asks us to consider how our individual gifts, our creativity, and our leadership can contribute to the communities and the collective future that we are all helping to create. So some really big themes coming through. And to begin, I'd like to dive into expression, right? Authentic expression and truth, because that really seems to be the nexus, the foundation this month as far as the energy climate goes. Now, I'm going to be bold and say it, right? Expression that isn't rooted in authenticity rarely feels sustainable. It is one thing to discover who we are through reflection, healing, or personal growth. It's a whole other to consistently make decisions, create, communicate, and participate in the ways that reflect those discoveries. The transition between those experiences is rarely seamless either, because genuine expression often reveals the places where uncertainty still exists. However, rather than signaling failure, those moments simply show us where growth is continuing. This type of progression is going to become immediately visible in this month's astrology. We open today with Jupiter newly in Leo, forming a square with Chiron, who's newly in Taurus. This is happening on the 1st. This is how we start our month. So we're beginning with the first significant challenge of Jupiter's new journey through Leo, which of course just began yesterday. And yes, overall, this transit is encouraging expansion, confidence, creativity, and visible participation. But Chiron in Taurus is continuing to highlight the wounds that we might have around our relationship to self-worth. Kitty's okay. Kitty's okay. As well as security and our personal value. So instead of launching us directly into effortless confidence with this transit, which I know everybody's excited about Jupiter in Leo, it's going to be a fun one. But this initiating alignment really asks us, is how we are here to show up actually being supported by a foundation sturdy enough to sustain us? Thus, I imagine old questions about belonging, capability, or whether our contributions truly matter may briefly reappear, rise to the surface. But this is not because we're moving backward. It's because genuine growth naturally tests the foundations beneath it. Now, in the days that follow, I think we're going to see the pace accelerating considerably. By the 4th, on Saturday, we see Mars conjuncting Uranus in Gemini, and this could introduce sudden insights, unexpected conversations, and rapid shifts in perspective. This seems especially significant because Uranus is also newly in Gemini, and Mars is an activating energy. So we might see some themes coming through that may remain active for us throughout the coming 7 years. So it's not just a short shot in the dark. This is something that could really be helping to highlight the themes that we need to be working through in the foreseeable future, as this paradigm of culture is rapidly shaping up to be something we've never experienced before, right? Now, that same day, let me see, you're being really obnoxious, baby. Thank you. That same day, Mars is also going to be sextiling Neptune in Aries. And this encourages intuition and imagination to kind of work alongside our intellectual curiosity. And then the next day, on July 5th, we see Mars trining Pluto in Aquarius, adding depth, determination, strategic focus, and maybe helping to transform some of those flashes of inspiration into actual ideas with genuine long-term potential. So yeah, we see these early alignments generating momentum without demanding immediate certainty. They're encouraging experimentation this weekend, some curiosity, and the willingness to remain intellectually flexible as new possibilities emerge. Taken all together, the transits of this opening week of July really kind of reveal cat hair all over my face. They're revealing an important distinction, I think, between innovation and confidence. So, new ideas often arrive long before we feel completely prepared to act on them, right? Inspiration has a way of exposing the gap between what we can imagine and what we can currently believe ourselves capable of expressing. That discomfort, it's not necessarily a sign that the opportunity is wrong. More often, it really reflects the natural process of allowing our internal sense of identity to catch up with the possibilities that are beginning to unfold. July, therefore, it's beginning with encouragement rather than reassurance. The goal is not to eliminate uncertainty before we move forward, nor is it to wait until every lingering fear has disappeared before participating more fully in our lives. Instead, the energy of these opening aspects, it really suggests that authentic expression grows through practice. Vulnerability may continue to accompany creativity for some time, but it no longer gets to determine whether we choose to speak, create, contribute, or lead. That needs to come from something else more authentic and more important than our comfort. Now, I think all of this authentic expression and truth is helping us to build foundations for what is coming next. Authentic expression is rarely built through momentum alone. And while the beginning of July generates this excitement, inspiration, and feeling of new possibilities, Cancer season is still quietly reminding us all that growth is only sustainable when supported by clarity. Yet, rather than slowing the month down, it seems that this energy of the journey creates the stability that's needed for everything that's going to follow. Before we can consistently express ourselves outwardly, we first need to understand what is genuinely true within us. That process is going to begin as the Sun in Cancer is going to form a square with Saturn in Aries on Monday the 6th. This is encouraging us to examine the relationship between emotional security and personal responsibility. Cancer seeks belonging, nourishment, and protection, while Aries pushes toward independence and decisive action. Their tension here, then, therefore, is asking whether our ambitions are supported by a healthy emotional foundation or whether old patterns are still shaping the way we respond to challenges. Shortly afterwards, Neptune is going to be stationing retrograde in Aries on the 7th, and this will be turning our attention inward, inviting a more honest relationship with our motivations, ideals, and the sense of purpose that we all have. Combined with the last quarter moon in Aries on that same day, I think these energies are really encouraging release rather than acceleration. So it's an interesting kind of energy to start off the first full week of July with, but it's asking us to create space in order to recognize what no longer supports continual growth in our lives. Now, as the emotional landscape begins settling, The focus naturally expands into the way that we relate with others and what we genuinely value. We'll see Venus entering Virgo on Thursday, July 9th, and that's shifting relationships, creativity, and personal priorities toward greater discernment, thoughtfulness, and practical care. The very next day, Venus then forms its own trine with Chiron in Taurus. And this is kind of going to be suggesting that healing can unfold through simple acts of consistency, respect, and attentive presence, rather than needing some sort of dramatic breakthrough. And at nearly the same time, Venus is also opposing the true node in Pisces. And that could be prompting some reflection on how our everyday choices really align with our long-term growth. While the true node is also simultaneously forming a sextile with Chiron, right? So there's another reinforcement of the idea that lasting evolution often emerges through quiet healing, through renewed self-worth and compassionate adjustments rather than some sort of sweeping ignorant transformation, right? There's that participation and authenticity coming through again that we see so much of this month. Now, the growing sense of coherence that this is creating, I think, is going to reach. I have so much cat hair on me now. I love my kitties. Yes, this coherence, I think, reaches an important milestone when the Sun forms a conjunction with Mercury retrograde in Cancer on Sunday the 12th. This is going to be bringing thoughts and emotions into closer alignment. Our conversations could become more honest, insights could become easier to articulate, and our experiences that once felt difficult to understand could begin finding some clarity and meaning. Then, just a couple days later on the 14th, we have our Cancer new moon, which is opening up a fresh lunar cycle that'll be more centered on home, belonging, emotional resilience, and the environments and relationships that support our genuine well-being. So rather than encouraging dramatic external change, this new moon will invite us to establish intentions that are rooted in emotional honesty, creating conditions where future growth can develop naturally instead of being forced. Now, taken all together, I think these Cancer season transits reveal why July does not immediately rush towards visibility, even with Jupiter having entered Leo at the end of June. This is all to kind of help teach us that authentic expression cannot be separated from emotional integrity. It can't be separated from healthy relationships or even a stable sense of personal value. It is essential. It's at the core. So before confidence becomes something that we can demonstrate publicly, it must first become something that we quietly experience within ourselves. So this Cancer season is really providing that opportunity, strengthening the emotional, relational, and internal foundations that will soon allow Leo season's creativity, leadership, and participation to emerge with greater authenticity and lasting purpose. And that kind of brings me to how Leo season is really going to shift the focus. Authenticity, it becomes most meaningful when it's interacting with and in the world. Personal growth may begin as an inward process of reflection, healing, and self-discovery, but it eventually seeks expression through the way we live, create, communicate, and contribute. July's second half really marks that transition. The emotional foundations that we establish during Cancer season remain absolutely essential, but the energy will increasingly shift towards greater participation, inviting us to discover what becomes possible when inner clarity begins shaping our outward action. Now, that change will emerge through a remarkable sequence of outer planet alignments, and it'll start before Leo season. The first is going to be Uranus in Gemini, forming a sextile with Neptune in Aries on the 15th. And this is followed a few days later by Uranus trining Pluto in Aquarius on the 18th. Now, together, these rare aspects seem to be creating a supportive backdrop for innovation, imagination, and long-term transformation. All of these major generational planets have recently shifted signs. We've had a complete changing of the guard since the end of 2024 when Pluto kind of started this precession, and it being the slowest moving of our planets, it is allowed for the collective catch-up of all of the other transiting planets as they have shifted signs subsequently. So it's really interesting to see all of this action in these earliest degrees of their new respective signs. And especially with Uranus being the last one to move into Gemini, I think it's encouraging the new perspectives, more intellectual curiosity. Whereas Neptune is working to expand vision and heighten inspiration. And then, of course, Pluto is the undercurrent that continues reshaping collective systems and shared structures. So while the effects of all of these transits will likely unfold gradually because the outer planets means that we're dealing with these themes over many months and years, they also provide an important context for July's more personal story too. And that's authentic expression is not developing in isolation, but alongside broader cultural, technological, and social change. They are not happening in isolation. The changes that we feel within are also being reflected without, and vice versa. So as we as individuals discover new ways of participating, the collective landscape is evolving alongside us. Now, the faster moving planets are going to come in after this sequence of events and begin to start translating these larger currents into our everyday experience. We'll see Mars in Gemini forming a sextile with Saturn in Aries on Sunday the 19th, which is bringing in some discipline, patience, and strategic action to all of the excitement that's been generated earlier on this month and in all of spring season. And then soon afterward, on the 20th, we see Jupiter trining Neptune. And so this will be expanding imagination, generosity, and creative vision before we then see Jupiter immediately encountering an opposition to Pluto in Aquarius on that same day, which will bring up questions of influence, responsibility, and the relationship between individual ambition and the collective well-being are going to come into sharper focus at that time. Finally, we have a couple more things coming up right before we shift into Leo season, and that is the first quarter moon, which will happen on the 21st in Libra. This is further enhancing and reinforcing the whole shift by reminding us how, again, growth rarely occurs in isolation. So those intentions that we establish under the Cancer new moon the week prior may encounter some harsh realities or challenges around relationship, cooperation, or shared responsibility. And nearly at the same time, Jupiter is going to be forming a sextile with Uranus and Gemini. So again, lots of activations between all of the major planets. And this one in specific is encouraging more curiosity, experimentation, and the openness to opportunities that may not have been imaginable even weeks ago. I'm really, really curious to see how these this conversation between Jupiter and Uranus goes. Uranus in Gemini has already been an incredibly powerful shift in energy for me personally, and with Jupiter bringing that expansion and expression, I'm really curious to see what comes through. And all of that leads us up to the Sun entering Leo on the 22nd, beginning the Leo season. And that's when the tone of the month will change noticeably. Cancer's work of emotional integration, it's eventually giving way to this new season that's centered on creativity, vitality, generosity, and authentic self-expression. Leo, it's often mistaken for a sign that's concerned primarily with recognition or attention, especially in the modern versions of astrology that focus more on the individual and personality. However, its deeper lesson is really about participation. The healthy self-expression that Leo represents doesn't seek validation for its own sake. Of course, every sign has its shadow, so that's not to say that if you've encountered a narcissistic Leo that your experience isn't valid. My father was a narcissistic Leo, so I know. But I think it naturally, when it is in its highest expression, just shares what it has cultivated. Now, the Sun square to Chiron that happens immediately after on the 23rd is also going to be reminding us that visibility can still awaken lingering questions around self-worth and belonging too. And that can be on either extreme, either insecurity or arrogance. However, those moments aren't necessarily signs that our confidence has been misplaced. Often, when I see these transitions in the astrological climate, especially big transitions with transits, signs moving between one theme to the other, I do see the aspects that come through as challenging right after as almost the opportunity to see where the opportunity is, because things that make us uncomfortable, that contrast of life that shows us, oh, I don't actually want this, is very useful. And if we stop separating ourselves from it and treating it like the problem, it can actually help us to get to the bottom of things very quickly. So I see this immediate, potentially challenging, destabilizing aspect as actually quite beneficial for Leo season in general, as well as the larger Jupiter transit and everything we might be learning this year as it goes through Leo. Now, also on the 23rd, the day after Leo season begins, we have another important turning point as we'll see Mercury stationed direct in Cancer that same day. Now, this comes after weeks of reviewing our memories, conversations, and emotional patterns. And as Mercury begins moving forward again, it should make it easier to integrate the understanding that we've gained throughout the retrograde. And again, it'll also be kind of contributing to the momentum starting to build. Because that retrograde, it does kind of hold us back a little bit. It makes things feel a bit more personal and reflective. And so I think Leo season starting, the retrograde finishing, like there's going to be a bit of amped up energy. Decisions are likely to become clearer, communication could become more intentional, and that emotional insight that we've gleaned through Mercury working its way to revise and revisit those Cancer themes could really begin translating into practical action, especially when supported by Leo season's energy of expression and participation. So by the end of this sequence of shifting energy, July is already transformed its central question, right? The month at that point will no longer be asking whether we understand ourselves deeply. It'll start asking whether we're prepared to allow that understanding to shape the way we participate in the world. That means trusting that the authentic creativity, leadership, and contribution can emerge most naturally when they grow from a foundation of truth. Now, we do still have a bit of stuff coming in towards the end of July, the last week of July. I think we're going to see ourselves moving into themes of individual expression and collective purpose, and how those intermingle, support each other, maybe challenge each other a bit or invite opportunity. Because again, authentic expression, it reaches its fullest potential when it becomes a part of something larger than ourselves. The confidence cultivated throughout July is therefore not meant to remain as an internal achievement or some sort of personal milestone. It's going to become most meaningful through that participation that keeps coming back again and again is such an important theme of this month. And this includes the ways that our ideas, creativity, relationships, and leadership ultimately influence people and communities all around us. So as the month draws to a close, the astrology shifts from asking how we express ourselves to asking what our expression contributes. Now that process is probably going to begin with a bit of a series of transits that are strengthening communication and encouraging thoughtful refinement. One of those is Mercury in Cancer forming a sextile with Venus in Virgo on the 24th, which will be helping emotional understanding find some practical expression through conversation, relationships, and everyday acts of care. Then on Saturday the 25th, Neptune in Aries forms a sextile with Pluto in Aquarius. And this is continuing the longer term dialogue between imagination and transformation. While this outer planet alignment will be unfolding gradually over many months and the shadow for years, right? We've already kind of been in this because these planets move so slowly. It's still reinforcing one of this month's, one of July's central themes, which is meaningful change is sustained when inspired vision becomes integrated into the structures, into the communities, and into the systems that shape daily life. So it's not enough to have the big picture. We need to bring that down, right? It's not enough to be enlightened. It's our job to bring the light down and bring the light into daily life, bring the light into these more dense experiences that we are here having. Now, attention is going to turn again towards the future as Saturn stations retrograde in Aries on the 26th. And I know that seems like a bit of an oxymoron, but it's really inviting a thoughtful reassessment of responsibility, of leadership, and the commitments that we are prepared to carry forward ourselves. On that same day, we see the true node moving into Aquarius, and this will be shifting the collective evolutionary emphasis towards more innovation, towards more collaboration and shared progress. So together, I see these transitions really asking us to consider not only what we hope to create, but how our individual choices contribute to something beyond our own immediate experience. Leadership, therefore, becomes less about directing others and more about accepting responsibility for the influence our participation naturally carries. Okay, so the sun is subsequently going to reinforce that perspective too through a remarkable sequence of aspects on July 27th. First, it opposes Pluto in Aquarius. And this is revealing the relationship between personal identity and the larger collective forces. Then it's trining Neptune in Aries, where imagination, compassion, and creative vision, they're going to soften a bit of that tension and maybe provide some renewed inspiration. So it's a mixed bag, right? And they're big energies. These are all major planets that we have the sun interacting and bringing illumination to. And that includes another third aspect in this solar sequence of the 27th, which is the sun sextiling Uranus in Gemini. And this is encouraging that originality, curiosity, and openness to new possibilities that the Uranus's new transit in this sign has already been stirring up. But again, the sun is going to bring that illumination and clarity in new ways. So together, all of these alignments really suggest that authentic leadership requires both stability and adaptability. We will all be asked to remain rooted in our values while continuing to learn, evolve, and respond to an ever-changing world. A few days later, on the 29th, we will see Venus in Virgo forming a square with Mars in Gemini. And I think that this is coming through to remind us that even healthy relationships and creative collaborations require ongoing communication, flexibility, and mutual respect as differing priorities and approaches emerge. So be patient. Don't make yourself feel forced to come to any sort of conclusions. There's a lot that's to be revealed, and I think we'll all be better off if we give ourselves the grace and the time to have those revelations come through. Now, the month really concludes on the 29th, as later that same day, we also see the sun forming a conjunction with Jupiter in Leo. This will be amplifying confidence, generosity, creativity, and the willingness to fully inhabit our unique gifts. Then only hours later, we have the full moon in Aquarius, which is going to be illuminating the complementary relationship between individual expression and collective purpose. Where Leo reminds us that every person has something distinctive to contribute, its counterpart Aquarius demonstrates that those individual gifts become most meaningful when they strengthen the communities, relationships, and shared future that we're all creating together. July's astrological climate, therefore, concludes with subtle but important redefinitions of success, namely, success is authentic expression, meaning as measured by the integrity with which we participate in life and by the lasting value our creativity, our leadership, and our presence contribute to the world around us. In the end, I think this month is about embracing expression in motion. Every season of growth eventually arrives at a point where preparation gives way to participation. We spend time learning, questioning, healing, and strengthening our foundations because those experiences ultimately shape the way we show up in the world. July reminds us that authentic expression is not a departure from that inner work. It's its natural continuation. The confidence we seek is rarely something we discover first and express later. More often, it develops gradually as our choices, relationships, and creativity and leadership become increasingly aligned with what we know to be true. Taken as a whole, July's astrology traces that progression with remarkable consistency. The month begins by asking whether our willingness to be seen is supported by genuine self-worth rather than external validation. Cancer season continues strengthening our emotional clarity, relationships, and personal values before Mercury's direct station signals that reflection is becoming practical understanding. Then, as Leo season begins, creativity, generosity, and participation take center stage. While the month's final alignments steadily expand the conversation from individual expression towards collective contribution. By the end of it all, the story really comes down to a reflection on how authentic individuality naturally enriches the communities, relationships, and shared future that we are helping create. Looking ahead to when August begins, the emphasis will shift once more. Of course. The inspiration and authentic expression may have established a clear direction here in early summer, but I think sustainable growth always asks for more than vision alone. So Virgo season, together with the increasing stabilizing relationship between Jupiter and Saturn that we'll see come through in August, it's soon going to be refining all that July has come to reveal and is eventually transforming this creative momentum into disciplined practice, purposeful leadership, and structures capable of supporting long-term growth. So, if June helped us to understand ourselves more deeply and July invites us to live those discoveries more openly, August is going to eventually ask us how we can build a life that fully sustains everything, right? All that we're being called into. How do we sustain it? That is all for now that I have for you this month. Until then, take care and be blessed. If you are ever looking for more resources, you can head over to my website, Onescence, where I have lots of free goodies for you. That's onescence.com. And if you would like to look ahead or maybe look behind, you can always check out my app, the Onescent Dial, at dial.onescence.com. It's free. You can download it to your PC or to your Android phone pretty easily. And yeah, there's lots of goodies in there. It also allows you to look at all of this astrology from the lens as filtered where you are on Earth, because that's another thing we don't really get a lot of in astrology is location awareness and orientation, because most of the astrology that we have is based in the Northwestern Hemisphere. And so one of my passions has been learning about how the cycles of astrology work, what it was based on originally, and then applying that in a holistic way to the rest of the planet so that we can all be a part of these conversations in ways that are authentic to our true experience. If you're curious, check it out. And as always, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful and marvelous and magical July.